Alright, this is Nemo's War 2nd edition. This is some of the components with the board set up, already ready to play. It's an instruction manual. Game setup section. I've already got the game set up. Kind of give you a little overview on what you do to set up. You'll choose one of several finale cards at random, and then you don't see which one you picked, you just put it down. Then you'll mix up some of these adventure cards, put them on top along with several other cards. You have Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. They get mixed in with adventure cards, which basically is the timer for how many turns you'll get in the game. Once you get to the finale card, if you get to the finale card, you'll total your score. So some of the other items on the board is your notoriety track here. When your notoriety gets to this section, you'll add these ships to your draw pool. When it gets to here, you'll add these ships. If it ever gets up to here, you'll add this extra die. This is kind of the map of the oceans. The ones with the die symbol, those are your major oceans. Each ocean, like this one, the Western Pacific, has some bordered boxes. Those ones each start with a hidden ship marker in it. So you'll start with 12 hidden ship markers on the board at the beginning of the game. You also have your treasure available tokens. You'll start with one in each of the major oceans. You have your action point track. You start the game with 1 point. This is your resource track. You've got your hull, your crew, and Nemo. You start the game with your trackers all the way on the left side of the board, but you get the option at the beginning of the game to purchase one Nautilus upgrade card depending on the motive you choose. There's 4 different possible motives in the game. You have, this is the one I've chosen to play this game, anti-imperialism. But you have science, explore, anti-imperialism, and war. And that will affect how you want to play the game and the scoring at the end of the game. Anyway, as I said, you have an opportunity when you are setting up the game to purchase a Nemo upgrade or a Nautilus upgrade card depending on what motive you've chosen. As you'll see, this one is for anti-imperialism, and I decided to purchase it, so it cost 3 resources to purchase, and that's why you'll notice I paid with 1 of each of those resources. You could have paid for it in any way you wish. I chose to pay 1 resource each, and so that gives me the double hull Nautilus upgrade to start the game. And you also have 4 other Nautilus upgrade cards that you can purchase later with salvage from ships you've sunk, and this is their cost in sunk ships. The other thing you have at the beginning of the game is the adventure deck, which is basically all the adventure cards that you did not choose when you created your draw pile. You have some uprising cubes that you can add to the board with one of your actions called Insight. Another thing you have it set up is your characters. Each of these will give you either additional scoring at the end of the game, or you can sacrifice them during the game for, depending on what they are. This one can give you 2 additional actions. This one can give you 3 additional actions, or you can use it for a +3 die roll modifier, +1 action, 1 reroll, +1 die roll modifier, and +2 die roll modifier. But a couple of these, if you use them, like if you use this one, you'll have to add a notoriety to the track. This one you'll have to add 1 notoriety. This one you actually lose a Nemo if you use that one. a Nemo resource, which, if you remember, is up here on this track. If any of these resources ever get to the defeat spot on the track, then you immediately lose the game. So how does the game flow? Well, it's pretty simple. You have a turn sequence that starts with an event phase, then you do a placement phase in which you'll roll dice and place ships on the board. And then you can do your turn based on the number of action points you have, and then you can take actions based on those points. So why don't we just start with an example of the beginning of the game. Well, the first card you have is Act 1, Prologue. And basically it says to roll a die and place the Nautilus in the corresponding major ocean. So let's do that. Take a die, roll it, 3 each. So then you can place the Nautilus in that ocean. It has the 3. Place the Nautilus. It comes with a white Nautilus. I just painted this one not very well, but anyway, then you begin the first turn of the game by choosing an adventure card. And our first card drawn says, in every ocean where there are one or more Prussian warships, immediately discard one hidden ship token or one revealed ship token of any nationality. Then you may pass for this card's tonnage or fail for -2 notoriety. Well, since this is the very first turn of the game, we have no Prussian warships because we have no revealed ships on the board. So I believe all we can do is fail this card for -2 notoriety. But our notoriety is already at 0, so we can't go below 0. We place this card in the fail pile. You have a pass pile and a fail pile. For cards that you've passed, they go here. They will help your scoring. Cards that you fail will not. I forgot to mention when we had this Act 1 card, it shows you which dice you'll roll for the second part of the game, for the second part of the turn, which is the placement phase. So in the placement phase, because we're in Act 1, we roll 2 white dice. We got a 1 and a 3. You take the difference in those dice, which would be 2, and that will be the number of action points you get to add to your action point track. We started with 1, so we add 2. That gives us 3 actions for our turn. But before we get to take our turn, we have to place ships with these. So it tells you to place a ship in the number 1 ocean and in the number 3 ocean. Because our ocean spots are not filled, we're able to place those. So you take hidden ship marker and add a hidden ship token to the number 1 ocean, and you had a hidden ship token to the number 3 ocean, which happens to be where the Nautilus is at this time. And that's it for the placement phase at this time. So now I have 3 possible actions. So what are your possible actions? Well, here's the actions and their cost. You can adventure, which costs 2 action points, and then you'll draw one of your adventure cards. Actually, since this is the beginning of the game, I should have placed 1 treasure available token on top of that pile. The other actions you can take are attack. You can attack one of these hidden ships, or if there is an already revealed ship in that spot, you can attack that. There are 2 possible types of attack. You've got a stock attack, which will give you a +1 die roll modifier, but you can only make 1 attack for that action point. Or you've got a bold attack, which will allow you to continue to attack ships until either you fail attacking a ship or you take a ship for salvage instead of for its tonnage. when you take a ship for its tonnage, you'll place them in this track depending on which ocean that you sunk the ship in, and then you'll get scoring at the end of the game based on that. If you take a ship for salvage, you place it on this track, and that is what you'll use to purchase your Nautilus upgrade cards. When you want to attack a hidden ship that's not revealed already, you simply remove the marker. At the beginning of the game, you start with your white non-warships and your light yellow warships in your draw pool, and that's what you'll draw from when you reveal a hidden ship. Later in the game, as I mentioned, you'll add the blues, the greens, your dark yellows, your orange, your red, and possibly from events these blacks. They have higher on the ships. I may as well mention this is their attack value and their defense value. The darker the color seems the more powerful the ship. Okay, the other action you can take is Insight. When you take the Insight action, you'll roll on your success table here against the Insight track. You can get different dice roll modifiers, both positive and negative, and they are explained here. You can use a ship's resource to add dice roll modifier. You can spend a treasure you have to add a dice roll modifier. Certain cards can give you modifier. You have positive and negative modifiers. But if you're successful in your Insight action, then you can put an uprising cube in one of these spots that are adjacent to an ocean if they're connected by a brown line, and those uprising cubes allow you scoring based upon the liberation score and your motive. So for each cube at the end of the game, if you get to the end of the game where you're scoring, you get, for instance with the anti-imperialism, you get 6 points per cube. Your other action is move for 1 point, and that just allows you to move the Nautilus one ocean connected from the ocean he's in by these blue lines. These dotted lines are only for placement actions, not for moving the Nautilus. So the Nautilus, for instance, if he was here, could move for 1 point over to the European seas, or to the Arctic Ocean, or down here to the South Atlantic for 1 movement point. There are Nautilus upgrade cards, well, one Nautilus upgrade card that allows you to move 2 oceans for 1 point. There's an effect later you can get from an event card that allows you to put the Arabian Tunnel between the European seas and the Indian Ocean, and then the Nautilus is able to move between these 2 oceans. Next action you can take is the rest action. Again, you'll roll on your table down here to see if you're successful. Various dice roll modifiers are allowed. That allows you to gain crew resource back. Got your repair action, which you roll on the table, allows you to regain hull resource. The refit action allows you to purchase additional Nautilus upgrade cards if you have the salvage. And then your search action allows you to search for treasure in an ocean where there is a treasure available icon, or a token. And again, the cost of these in action points is shown in this table. So for an example, since this is our first turn, we've drawn our event card. Now we have 3 action points we can spend, so we'll spend 1 action point to search this ocean because it has a treasure available token. So to search, we roll 2d6, and we'll be rolling on the search table. So you can see that we want at least to get 7 or 8 to be successful, but obviously you do better the higher you roll. If you get a 9 to 11, you can collect 1 treasure. If you get 12 or greater, you can collect 2 treasures. Now, we'll want to use a dice roll modifier to ensure, a higher roll. And one of the things you can do to do that is to exert one of your ship resources, which basically you're betting. So for search, you can choose any one ship resource. So what we'll do is exert the crew ship resource, which gives us a +3 dice roll modifier. Now if you fail, because you're betting that resource, you could actually lose 1 or 2 points of crew, and then you would have to move your marker down to this section or this section, depending on the result of your roll. So we're going to go with crew with a +3, and we'll roll our d6. So we got a total of 5 +3 is 8, which is not great, but not a failure either. We get suspected, so we collect a treasure, but we have to add 1 to the notoriety track. So up here, move our notoriety track up 1, and now we collect a treasure. When you're collecting treasure, you have various treasure tokens. You put them in whatever container you have. You choose one out, and this one is worth 3 points. You put it in the collector treasures box, and you can keep score while you're playing or just total your score later. But if you were keeping score while you're playing, you can take your little treasure score icon and put it on 3, so you have 3 points in treasure at this time. Now, because we've successfully searched this ocean and found the treasure, we now have to remove this treasure available token from the board. These treasure available tokens can be replenished through various events and actions that take place during the game. So we still have 2 points left. Why don't we use 1 point to do a stalk attack against one of these hidden ships. So at this point we decide we're going to do a stalk attack against this ship. We put this token. The stalk attack gives us +1 dice roll modifier. We replace this with a ship out of our draw pool. So randomly select, and we get a freighter, the Scotia. Because it's a non-warship that has no attack value, so it won't attack the Nautilus, but it has a defense of 10. You will gain 2 notoriety if you successfully sink this ship, and there's some scoring points you'll get here if you take this ship, if you sink it, if you take it as tonnage instead of as salvage. So let's see how we do. I've put the freighter in the ocean with the Nautilus. I place the stalk attack as my action. So again, that allows me, I can only do 1 attack with that action point that I spent, but I do get a +1 die roll modifier, and I choose if I want to wager or exert one of my resources, so I will exert a crew. Again, you can choose one of the 3 when you're attacking a ship. If there was a warship in this ocean besides the one I'm attacking, for each warship in the ocean you get a -1 modifier. But luckily this is the beginning of the game and there's only 2 hidden ships and the ship that I'm attacking. So we'll get a +1 for our stalk attack, +3 for the crew I'm exerting, so a total of +4. Need to roll a 10, so we hope we're at least getting a 6. And we got a 7, so were successful. So we remove the stock attack. Now we decide whether we're going to put this in tonnage, score it as tonnage, so we'll score it the later of the game. We sunk it in the North Atlantic, so if we took it as tonnage, we would put it here in the North Atlantic tonnage track, or we can take it as salvage in the hopes of later purchasing one of these Nautilus upgrades. I believe I'm going to take it as salvage, but we do have to unfortunately add 2 notoriety on our notoriety track for sinking that ship. That moves it further along. Obviously you don't want to get up here because then you start adding more ships. If you get up here you got to add more dice. You can get defeated depending on your motive. If it ever gets to this section, you'll get defeated if you had the explorer motive. Here, if you have the anti-imperialism motive and the notoriety marker reaches, you'll be defeated, which is what I'm playing right now. Got another one here if you're doing the science motive, plus these ships get added. And then, here, if you're playing the war motive, you'll get defeated at that point. So, I still have one more point, action point. I have to decide what we want to do. I think we'll take this action point to move the Nautilus from the North Atlantic to the European seas. And that's the end of that turn. So the next thing you do is draw another adventure card. These adventure cards, you know, they have a little flavor text. I believe they're actually from quotes out of the book from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but I'm not positive of that. This card is a test card. You'll have to try to defeat this, or roll equal to or higher than this score to pass. And if you pass, you gain 1 hull, and if you fail, you lose 1 Nemo or 1 hull. Now, you'll notice at the top of this card, it's got a little icon for Nemo or hull. So those are the 2 possible resources you can exert to try to pass this test. You can do either or both of those. So I think we will do both. So we will exert Nemo and hull for a total dice roll modifier of +4. So since we have to get 10, we got to roll at least a 6. Now another thing you can do for possible dice roll modifier is some of these things you could discard this treasure for 3 additional points, or 3 additional dice roll modifier. But I don't think I'm going to do that at this time. I think I can roll at least a 6 with my +4 dice roll modifier I currently have. Let's see what we get. Oh, pitiful. I only got a 4. So 4 and 4 is 8. I do not pass this test, so I fail, and I lose 1 Nemo or 1 hull. So I'll put this in the fail pile, choose to lose 1 Nemo or 1 hull. Because the Nemo track is shorter, I believe I'll lose 1 hull. But now, also because we bet both the Nemo and the hull resource when we exerted them and failed, we now lose 2 points on each of those. If the lowest roll we had gotten over here was a 1, we would only lose 1 point in each of those. But anything above a 1, you lose 2 points. So, unfortunately, I've got to move the hull down to fighting trim, and I've got to move Nemo down to steady. He's getting awful close to the defeat there already, so that's not good. One thing I didn't add is I have this double hull that I purchased at the beginning of the game, which allows me to add a +1 DRM when exerting my hull resource. So I would have had another +1, but still I would have been shy because I would have had 9 points instead of the 10 I needed. So even that didn't help us. I could use one of these characters, but we're a little too early in the game. I hate to sacrifice one of them already to get extra dice roll modifier points. I probably should have spent that treasure token, but that's how the cookie crumbles. You never know what you're going to get. Okay, well, that was our event phase. Now we go on to the placement phase, where we roll our 2 dice. 5 and a 6, that sucks because we only get 1 action point. The difference between 5 and 6 is 1, so we get 1 action point. So we won't get to do much on our turn this time. Then we have to do the placement. We have to put 1 hidden ship token in the 5 ocean, which there's room for 1 more. So I'll place that there. And 1 hidden ship token in the 6 ocean, which there's still room for 2 more. When these oceans are full and you have to place a hidden ship token, you can place one in an adjacent connected ocean if there's a space available. If there's not an empty space in the ocean that you've rolled or one of the adjacent oceans, then you have to reveal one of the hidden ships markers by drawing a ship from the draw pool, and either in the ocean where you were supposed to place it or one of the adjacent oceans. If this ocean were full of ships and this ocean were full of ships and this ocean were full of ships, so there was no hidden ship token to replace, then I would flip over a white non-warship token in one. Flip over one of these white non-warship tokens, if there was one, to its warship side. If there's no white non-warships to flip over, then you have to draw a ship from the pool and place it anywhere there's an empty space on the board. If you ever can't do that because there's no empty spaces on the board, then you're just immediately defeated. Anyway, we have 1 action point to spend, so we'll spend it. And why don't we try to do an insight action, because with the anti-imperialism motive, we do get 6 points for each uprising cube we place. And the European seas does have 2 spots where we can put uprising cubes, and since I've only got 1 point, there's only a few things I can do, one of which is insight. So to do that, we'll look over here at the table, and you can see we can get points for exerting a ship's resource. So I will exert the crew because that will give me +3. I could spend a treasure and get another +3. Should I do that? No. There's other options. You know, if I had the Arcane Library Nautilus upgrade, that could give me some more points toward this. There's no warships in there, or there's no revealed ship tokens in there. I guess it doesn't have to be a warship for the insight. It can be any ship. And there's not already an uprising cube in there to give me negative points. So I'll get the +3 from my crew, roll my 2d6, and we hope we get at least a 9 to be able to place a cube and lose 1 notoriety. Alright, let's wish we have good luck. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. 4 +3 is only a 7. So sadly, at least we don't fail and lose resources, but apathy for a 7, so no effect. Now again, I could use one of my characters here and add, you know, +2 dice roll modifier and get a success, but I don't want to use him so early. Since I didn't lose, I can put my marker back here from where I exerted my crew. And sadly, that's the end of that turn. Anyway, that's how you go. through the game until you get through the deck. As you get to the different acts, eventually the next act will add where you're rolling a black dice also, which basically every time you do the placement phase, that's another ship you have to place. And then when you get further on, you could add another black dice or another white dice. The difference, when you add the other white dice, you choose two to take the difference and decide how many action points you're getting. But that's yet another ship marker you have to place on the board. So the more dice you have to roll as the game goes on, it gets harder because you're placing more and more ships on the board. And that's it. You go till either you're defeated from not being able to place on a ship on the board, or because your notoriety reaches too far, or one of your ship resources gets to the defeated, or you get to the finale card in your deck. And if that happens, if you get to the finale card, then you get to score, based on your motive, how many warships you sunk, non-warship sunk, adventure cards, treasure, uprising cubes you've placed, science discovered. Each of these cards, may have, like, that's a science icon, that's a venture card icon worth 0, but that's worth 1 science, and with my motive, each science icon would be worth 2. If you make it to your finale card, then you get to score, add up all your points, and see what your level of victory is, depending on the score you get. And that, in a nutshell, is a quick example, a couple of terms of how you play Nemo's War. I could show you quickly how you fight a warship. So, for instance, if you decided you wanted to attack this warship, and you were going to do a stalk attack to get the +1 DRM, first thing that happens is the enemy warship always fires on the Nautilus first, because the Nautilus has no guns. It sinks its ships by ramming them. The warships have guns, see you coming, so they always get to fire first. So you roll 2 dice. If you get higher than their attack value, then they miss. If you get equal to or higher, if you get lower than their attack value, then they hit you. And then you have to take hits depending on the lowest dice you rolled. So, for example, say we're not using any roll modifiers for the ship attacking you. The only roll modifier you can get is if you have the reinforced armor upgrade card. So we rolled an 8. So actually, that would have been good when attacking this ship, because it would not hit me. And then you roll against its defense value, adding a modifier if you have one, or you can add a ship resource. So say if we added the +3 for our crew, we got an 8, +3 is 11. We would sink this ship. We decide whether we're going to take it as tonnage or as salvage. So that's how it works against a warship. Anyway, again, that's Nemo's War. The rule book, pretty well laid out. Seems a little confusing when you're first reading through the rules, but once you start playing, it's easy to refer back to the rules, and actually everything is pretty well laid out on the board that you're going to do. The rules for ship placement, uprising cubes, combat sequence, turn sequence. It's really well done. It's fun. I've only played twice so far. Neither time have I got to the scoring. I've lost both games due to not being able to place another ship on the board. The last game, my second game, I was just 1 card draw away from getting my finale card, but we'll see how this game goes. Not looking good so far.